Hello and welcome back to the Second Take Podcast. My name is Calvin Williams. I'm here with my co-host Marco Rogers, and today we bring you the last episode of the Second Take Podcast for the 2023 college football regular season. It is a very exciting one. Michigan versus Ohio State. It is rivalry week, feast week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Let's get straight into it. Marco, can you start us off with a quick recap of Week 12 in college football?
Yeah, so to start it off, Michigan heavily struggles against Maryland. Pretty embarrassing performance, if you ask me. Really just didn't come to play in this game. J.J. McCarthy, simply a bad performance. Can't really say much more than that. Talia Tagovailoa did outplay him. He made some ridiculous throws. Although his stats don't show it, he pretty much set them up for all three of their touchdowns. Michigan's receivers were not getting open after Roman Wilson went down with that injury. That's something that we need to improve on next week. The run game was not great outside of at the goal line, really. Samaj Morgan, nice run. But Josh Wallace looks incapable of guarding a legitimate wide receiver too, like Emeka Egbuka. And we're going to need our corners to step up big time next week. And just a pretty not confident performance here by the Wolverines.
Yeah, for me, I didn't really lose too much confidence from this game just because, we did this exact same thing last year against Illinois. We knew this would be a trap game. We're looking ahead to Ohio State, and we're just not focused on the task at hand. But in the end, we did get the win, so it just doesn't matter. Hopefully, we brush it off and play much better next week. Moving on, number 5, Washington wins at number 11, Oregon State, 22-20. Pretty unimpressive offensive performance from Washington. Michael Penix Jr. did not have a phenomenal game. 13 for 28, 162 yards, 2 touchdowns to cap it off. But pretty unimpressive offensive performance. They were able to get the job done due to 2 picks from DJ Uiagalelei. But definitely an unimpressive performance from the Huskies here. Marco.
Yeah, they did not score in the second half of this game. Also, Damian Martinez, the Oregon State running back, found lots of success. But this Washington team is starting to remind me of last year's TCU, a team. They play bad teams close, they play good teams close, but they always find a way to prevail. And they're sort of starting to remind me of them with an elite older quarterback, pretty good run game, some elite receivers, Rome Odunze, Quentin Johnston. They're really starting to remind me of TCU last year.
Definitely a little bit of deja vu going on there. Moving on, number 1, Georgia dominates at number 18, Tennessee. Marco, you take that one?
One thing I want to put out is I have no idea what the CFP is doing, keeping Tennessee ranked. This team is just simply bad. They lost to Florida. I think they're only ranked because Georgia was on their schedule, not because they're actually good. Oh, you play Georgia, so we'll just rank you. That's what the CFP is doing. Tennessee's not a good team, but it is a tough environment. Good win for Georgia. They look like the best team in college football by a somewhat decent margin like the last couple of years. I do think there are a few teams that could knock them off, but they're looking quite unstoppable right now.
Georgia is looking pretty... Sorry, I almost had to sneeze, but I didn't. Georgia is looking quite scary heading into the playoff season. Moving on, Florida State gets the job done over North Alabama, 58-13 after a scary 13-0 start in the first quarter. But what was especially scary about that 13-0 start is that Jordan Travis, he is injured, out for the season. College football career is over, and that injury was terrible. If you haven't seen it, foot went backwards. It was quite frankly disgusting. Definitely some playoff hopes almost lost there for Florida State, in my opinion. Just truly tragic for them.
Yeah, really feel bad for Jordan Travis as well. A guy, he's been there for 4 years. He probably could have transferred, went to a better place, but he stayed there, finally had their big year, their big breakout year. They're going to make the playoffs most likely, and then he goes down. Now this team's going to have a couple tough tests at Florida and against Louisville to try to prove themselves. Sort of similar to what 2014 Ohio State did with I think JT Barrett going down, and Cardell Jones coming in and winning them the Natty. So they're going to need their backup to really play well in these next couple weeks.
Yeah, Tate Rademacher, shout out Jake, looking looking to lead the team to a potential playoff berth. Moving on, quick college basketball recap. Started off with a rather depressing statement, Michigan losing to both Long Beach State and Memphis. The Long Beach State loss, I don't know, we just don't enjoy defense apparently, so we just didn't decide to play it that night. And the Memphis loss that just happened tonight, we managed to stay in it despite having a ridiculous number of turnovers and getting threes splashed in our face all night. But it just simply wasn't enough down the stretch to get the job done. Margo?
Yeah, Terrence Williams really showing his true colors in this Memphis game. Long Beach State game, I'm not sure why we can't score in a 1-3-1 zone. We did score a lot that game, but still, there were just a few possessions where that 1-3-1 zone killed us. Memphis game, second half was pretty good. We're playing loser of Arkansas Stanford. They're currently playing in overtime right now. Hopefully we play Stanford, which should be a pretty easy win. But this team really need of a bounce back.
And my tournament hopes aren't completely lost. I think this team has a bunch of potential just because of what we can do on the offensive side of the ball. But once Juwan gets back, I really need to see a really big improvement on the defensive side of the ball, and limiting turnovers. Moving on, number 2 Purdue takes down number 11 Gonzaga, number 7 Tennessee, and number 4 Marquette in the route to the Maui Jim Maui Championship. Zach Edey simply looks unstoppable. And by the way, I did know that Juwan was back today, but he is still not acting as the head coach. Phil Martelli is still the active head coach. Purdue just looks simply unstoppable. Just Zach Edey is elite. He had 28 points, 15 rebounds against Marquette. So this Purdue team is looking quite scary. Margo?
Yeah, I do believe that Marquette and Purdue are 2 of the best teams in the country. Marquette beat Kansas the day before. Maui Jim Maui was completely stacked this year. But yeah, Tennessee, they're a good defensive team. They just don't have enough scorers. Gonzaga, I'm not sure if they're going to be too good this year. And then obviously them and Marquette, both elite. Michigan did beat Marquette in a scrimmage though, so may as well stick us up into the top 5.
Moving on. You're just going to get into a quick NFL Week 11 recap. Started off with the Ravens beat the Bengals and Joe Burrow, a tragic injury. I was quite sad with this one. Out for the year. Marco, anything to say on this?
The Bengals season is over. Really tragic for Burrow as well. Really starting to play better in these last few weeks after a rough start. But tough for the Bengals, but they will not be attending the playoffs.
Truly tragic. Moving on, Lions survived the Bears. There is simply no quit in these Lions. A great win for the fellas, and you just love to see that type of fight. Obviously, you don't want to be in a close game versus the 3-8 Bears. But a win is a win in the NFL. Anyone can beat anyone. So honestly, any win is a good one in my book. Margo?
Yeah, poetry in motion watching Hutchinson sack former Ohio State QB Justin Fields for the game. Very, very nice play by Hutchinson, and I'm starting to like these Lions. Fun team to watch. Though I'm not a fan, definitely the team I'm going to be rooting for this year. And Stanford has just hit a 3 to send it into double overtime in that game. So, yeah.
All right, moving on. Eagles beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl rematch from last year. Marco, what did you see from the teams in this one?
Eagles looked impressive. Marcus Valdes-Scantling did completely sell this game for the Chiefs, but Eagles looks pretty good. I'm not saying, if these 2 teams met in the Super Bowl, I don't think that this matchup really says anything. They both looked pretty even. Looked like 2 of the best teams in the NFL. Good one for the Eagles. Big confidence booster, too. But Chiefs, not really a bad performance either.
Yeah, definitely a pretty low-scoring game for these 2 offenses, wouldn't you say? These are both pretty high-powered offenses, so 21-17 seems pretty low-scoring, but I don't know. What's your take on that?
I feel like when two teams that are very complete play against each other, even though they both have great offenses, if they're both good defensively, I feel like all those big time matchups are always a little bit more defensive. So that's why I just feel like both the defenses evened out the offenses.
Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on. Some quick NFL Week 12 predictions. Started off with the Thanksgiving Day matchups. Actually, both games are Thanksgiving Day matchups. So first we have the Packers at the Lions. I will be in attendance tomorrow. Very exciting stuff. Marco, who you got in this one?
I got the Lions. Packers, not an awful team. They're pretty good defensively, but Jordan Love is simply a bad quarterback. I think Lions win this one pretty comfortably, and a big win for them to continue to take the NFC North.
Yeah, I mean, Ford Field will be rocking, and Jordan Fields' brain will be too, as he throws like 2 or 3 picks and probably a pick 6 in there too. Lions should dominate this one, no trouble at all. Moving on, 49ers at the Seahawks. This one's a little bit intriguing. I'm going to take the 49ers in this one. Just too many weapons, in my opinion, for the Seahawks. But Seahawks, at times have played very well, like that win against the Lions earlier in the season. But Brock Purdy settles in, gets the job done. Marco.
Yeah, with Deebo Samuel back, this team is truly unstoppable. They have not lost a game with him healthy and Brock Purdy starting. Although he's not very involved last week, I think they get him involved. He has a big game on a pretty good Seattle secondary, but he still has a big game.
Yeah, I mean, the Niners have definitely bounced back after that 3-game losing streak with back-to-back wins over the Jags and Buccaneers. So looking a lot better as they head into this matchup against the Seahawks. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, college football rivalry week. It simply does not get better than this. Entertainment all weekend. Thanksgiving leftovers to eat while you watch the greatest sport in America. Let's start it off with number 16, Oregon State at number 6, Oregon. Marco, who you got?
This is actually a very intriguing matchup for me. Since Oregon, although they're dominating a lot of bad teams, they haven't beaten any good teams. I do think that this Oregon State team is very, very solid. I think they can run the ball well, really challenge Oregon's physicality. I think their defense, as we saw last week, they can handle explosive offenses. I think they handle Bo Nix somewhat well, who is probably the Heisman favorite as right now. I think Oregon State has a legitimate chance to end Oregon's playoff hopes. Although I do not think it happens. Give me Oregon this one. I'm going to go 28-17. I think their defense really gets it done.
Yeah, I mean, and this game has, as you said, Oregon on the a playoff hopefuls on the line. And this game has huge implications for the committee as well. Like, the committee is definitely rooting for Oregon State here because if Oregon wins out, they could be potentially put in a very tough situation. So we will see what happens. I too am going to take Oregon. I don't know. I mean, Oregon State took that loss last week against Washington. And I think Oregon is, even though they did lose earlier in the season to Washington, I just think they're actually a better team. So moving on, we have number 12, Ole Miss at Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. And this is actually going to be my upset pick. I've picked Mississippi State multiple times on upsets this year, and Will Rogers has failed me time and time again. He will not do so again. He simply will not. Will Rogers is bound for one breakout game a year, and this is that game. Home field advantage. The Mississippi State Bulldogs will prevail in the Bowl of Eggs. Marco?
Very intriguing matchup on Thanksgiving night. By the way, the Oregon State-Oregon game is on Friday night, so pretty exciting to have some games before Saturday, just to warm us up to the real games. But give me Ole Miss here. I just think that they're too talented. I think Quidshot Judkins has a huge game, and Mississippi State simply is not a good football team. They did, in fact, lose to Texas A&M by 41 points. That is simply not going to get it done. So give me Ole Miss by not a large margin since it is a very highly anticipated bowl game, but give me Ole Miss.
Yep, all right. Next up, we have number 8, Alabama at Auburn. Alabama is a 14-point favorite in this matchup. And in my opinion, this Alabama team has gelled so much lately in the past few weeks. I mean, they've looked really good past the first couple weeks of the season. I mean, Jalen Milroe has improved greatly. I mean, he's even making some cases in some people's mind for Heisman hopeful. So give me Alabama in this one big. I don't see Auburn competing at all. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why Auburn will likely compete is because it's the second biggest rivalry in all of sports. Though Auburn did just lose to New Mexico State by 21 last week, and Bama does look like a top 4 team as of right now, I do think that Auburn still competes. They are a pretty good team. Prior to that loss, they were on a 3-game win streak. They beat Arkansas by 38. That's a pretty solid win. Barely lost to Ole Miss, barely lost to Georgia. And I think they barely lose to Bama here. I think this is one of the many Iron Bowl classics. Nearly stunned Alabama and their playoff hopes before the SEC championship. But give me Bama here in a pretty low-scoring game. I'll say 24-20, Bama.
All right, yep, definitely could be a close one. Moving on, number 5, Florida State at Florida. I'll let you start off with that one, Marco.
This is actually going to be my upset pick. Tate Rademacher, he's not bad, highly recruited guy, very talented. He's just no Jordan Travis. And although Florida is just not that good of a team, without Travis, I don't think that Florida State is legitimately a playoff contender. I think they played all year without him. They likely lose 2 to 3 games. They've been playing close even with Travis to lots of teams. And now without him, I think that they're going to lose this game in the swamp, night game against a Florida team that nearly knocked off number 9 Missouri last week on the road. Like they looked legitimate last week. Florida did. This is one of the biggest rivalries in all of college football as well. Definitely a top 10 one. Gave me the Gators at home, stunning Florida State, and making the decision for the committee a lot easier.
Yeah, this one is tough for me. Like, obviously that Jordan Travis injury has to play a role in your decision, but this guy Tate Rademacher is not a bad quarterback at all. I mean, on the season, he's 376 yards and 5 touchdowns, no picks. If he can control the ball like that, I think Florida State's defense is much better than Florida's, and I think overall Florida State is a better team, and that's why they're undefeated as of yet. So I think as long as he can control the ball like he has in his few attempts all season, Florida State should be able to get the job done and at least keep their playoff hopes alive for a little bit longer. Moving on, Wazoo at number 4, Washington. Mark, who you got?
In the Cup of Apples, very big rivalry here. Cam Ward is a quarterback that can go shot for shot with Michael Penix. However, Wazoo does not have a run game, so the Washington can just focus their whole secondary on the pass. They have some elite corners like Luther Muhammad, who had a big time game last week against Oregon State. Really jumped himself up in those NFL mock drafts. But yeah, I think that Wazoo does have some success, but just the lack of run game really comes back to bite them. Their defense is not that good. They were on like a 5-game losing streak after a really good start. And then they beat Colorado by 42, which was pretty funny. So give me Washington here. I do think that Wazoo has success early. They come out fiery. Give me Washington here, 42-24.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this Wazoo team was on a 6-game losing streak before beating Colorado or thrashing Colorado last week. Despite that win last week, though, Washington's just simply too good. Even though their offense didn't look great last week against Oregon State, Wazoo's defense doesn't even compare to Oregon State's. So definitely give me Washington in this one. I'm going to say maybe Washington State keeps it close for a quarter or two, but Washington wins 38-21. And finally, the moment you have all been waiting for. The game, the greatest rivalry in all of sports. There have been so many matchups, so many great players, so many fights, so many close games, so many top 10 matchups, and this one adds another one to that list. Marco, give me your breakdown.
Well, first of all, I want to say I do not remember a game as big as this one, like within this series. '06 was a big one, 1 versus 2. But with all the outside noise involved with how good these two teams are, the sign stealing, Ohio State, Ryan Day's brother being involved with the investigation, Ohio State versus everyone, Michigan versus everyone. I mean, this is the most hyped up, just like not even on the football field, just hyped up based off social media this game has ever been. But on the football field, both these teams have earned their ranking. 2 versus 3, 2 at 3. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Travion Henderson, two of the best players in all of college football. Michigan, just such a balanced team. I think it comes down to which quarterback plays better. Kyle McCord versus JJ McCarthy, same class. Actually, I don't know if they're the same class, but both, I do believe they're the same class, both 5 stars. And both these guys have had some really good performances this year and some pretty bad performances this year. JJ starting to struggle a little in these last couple games. He has to go back to where he was against teams like Indiana. And Kyle McCord sort of never has elite performances, but never has bad performances, it feels like. He can be sloppy with the ball, though, at least more consistently than JJ. So, I mean, I really don't know who's going to win this game, but it really comes down to quarterback play and also the run game. Whoever runs the ball better has won the game like each of the last 10 years or something. So, two of the best, I believe the two best running backs in college football going at it. So, I think the run game also completely decides it.
Yeah, I mean, the past 2 years, Michigan has won this game in the trenches, but I mean, as we've seen, our run game has definitely not been as dominant as it was in the 2 past years. I do hope that Donovan Edwards finds that spark that he did last year against Ohio State. A big run from him would be absolutely crucial for Michigan. And like you said, that quarterback play is going to be huge in this one. JJ McCarthy needs to control the ball. Kyle McCord needs to control the ball, because if Mike Sanders still gets another interception, gets Michigan in good field position, that could be all she wrote for the Buckeyes. So, Marco, you got anything else?
I mean, not much. I mean, one of the few differences in this game between this year and last year, but both teams mostly the same. Obviously, McCord instead of Stroud, that's a downgrade. But Michigan does lose Ronnie Bell, and Michigan adds Blake Corum. He was not there last year. But Travion Henderson did not play in the game last year. I think that Chip Trayanum and Mayan Williams just weren't that good last year and weren't exploding. Travion Henderson is, in my opinion, the most explosive running back in college football this year. He's going to be definitely a handful. And if we let him break out a big run, it could also be all she wrote. I mean, that man can just turn a whole game with one run. Also, got to contain Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka. But yeah, just both teams really have to contain big plays and make the other offense be methodical. And I think whoever can do that wins this game.
Yep, that's all I have. And like you said, it's Ohio State versus everybody. It's Michigan versus everybody. But on that field, it is just Michigan versus Ohio State. Thank you all for listening to the Seg Take Podcast. We will see you next week. Peace.